Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Foresight TV. I have with me my friend Amy Schectman, the CEO of Life, and our first sort of introduction was very contentious. We're going to talk about that in a minute. I'm going to leave you hanging until after the introduction. So first, this. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. Amy, I'm super excited about having you on today. You are doing some amazing stuff. So I'm really excited about that. But I got to go back to the story of how we sort of first met. We were talking, we ran into each other at a conference in San Francisco a few weeks ago, and I had tried to figure out where it was. I knew that we'd had this big fight about something, and I could not figure it out. I went and looked, and as I was prepping today for this conversation, I used AI to help me gather information, and it actually went through and figured out where it was that we had this fight. And so I'll lay it out for you. A number of years ago, I'm thinking this is probably 6 or 7 years ago, probably, I think almost certainly before COVID, that I wrote an article where I said that I think that the crisis about affordability for senior living was way overblown. And my case for it was that when you looked at the data coming out of NIC, that it actually showed that way more than 50%, I think something like 75% of the people who were sort of eligible and typically looking for senior living actually found low to moderate senior living index. And it incensed you. And you responded and said, and I always had I have this policy if I write something and somebody thinks I'm full of garbage, I will publish their article, no matter how much I hate it and disagree with them. And I think you're the only person who's ever actually taken me up on that offer, and we did. And then we'd never met in person. And we met in person in conference, and I was pretty confrontational about it and said, oh yeah, you're the one who hates me or something like that. And so anyway, but that started our friendship, and I am excited about talking to you today. Let's start with a little bit about just who you are. I've talked too much, and who Life Communities are.
Oh, okay. So first of all, I'm not sure it was a fight as much as a really respectful disagreement and passion about serving elders. And I also want you to give me credit because I've been following you for that long. So maybe you characterize it as a fight, but I've been following everything you do with great interest. So I think we're more soulmates than antagonists.
So I do too. When I call it a fight, it just makes for better headlines and conversation, right? So
right.
You're absolutely right.
I save what I would call fighting for people who don't care about older adults, who say, you know, they've had their turn, now it's our turn. That's where I am. So who I am, my name is Amy. I have been the CEO of Life Communities for 16 years now. I've spent a career mostly in affordable housing and other aspects of care for older adults and families. Life Communities is an organization committed to the notion that every older adult should have a chance to live a full life of connection and purpose. We do it in two distinct ways. We create, I think, superior environments that are dynamic and supportive, where people can live and get what they need to live well for their whole lives, and advocating for policy changes so that what we do doesn't need to be so unique and it's broadly available. You alluded to Opus. I'll just add one sentence right now, which is we do everything we do with a laser sharp focus on affordability, meaning we go where the market fails. And the market has failed extremely low income seniors. And so we have 7 campuses, the 8th under construction, 9th about to start construction for extremely low income. We also feel the market has failed the middle, people who earn a little bit too much to qualify for subsidized housing, but not enough for our market in Massachusetts, in Eastern Massachusetts, what our market offers, that vast middle group. And so we created Opus, our first model for a middle income retirement community. So that's who we are and kind of who I am.
That's cool. I love this so much. So, do you do not do any traditional IL, AL memory care, or is it all? Tell me about the levels of care and what you do.
So, I have a hard time with those labels. I know that the field does, because independent living. Okay, I live in my house with my husband, and I've raised 3 sons in my house. I don't consider myself independent. If I didn't have my family, if I didn't have my friends and my networks, I wouldn't be living well. So the notion of independence, I think, is a false notion. I think we are all, to live well, we depend on each other. So our senior housing are brilliant communities where people care about each other, support each other, and help each other age well. Now, in doing that, we provide a lot of services to keep people able to do that. So, for example, maybe you can't shower yourself. So maybe we send someone in to help you shower. Does that mean you're not independent anymore? Well, again, I reject the notion of independence, but you're still living in a community where you're able to participate. What we do in most of our housing, I would say, includes services that people think about as in assisted living, helping home care, helping with meals, helping do things like that. We don't generally do what you might consider medical care, although in our Brighton campus, we have what's called PACE, Program for Inclusive Care for the Elders. So it's a medical that's lodged in our building and therefore available. And at Opus, we actually have a medical practice that is embedded and a home care practice embedded in our campuses. We believe that we can do everything someone needs to live their full lives in their apartment. And we at Opus, this is kind of a grand experiment. It's a continuing care retirement community. It's licensed as such. And we believe that we've got a medical practice, we've got a home care practice, and we've got a nurse practitioner running Opus. And all of them believe that we can do everything in a person's apartment and provide all the what are considered levels of care, but not be so bound by where they're delivered, but how they're delivered.
Okay, so I want to let you the big note I hear here. I don't know that we're going to get to it, but I do want to talk. I would love to be. I hope we can get to your embedded PACE program. I think that PACE is. We've got, I think, 2 PACE programs here in the Sacramento area. Each one has got maybe 200 or 300, maybe a little bit more than that in members. And I kind of scratch my head at it because it seems like they ought to each have 3,000 members. I think it's so underutilized, but I know the housing component has become a problem in the past, but it sounds like that's been better handled. So I'm hoping we can get to that, but I really want to get to Opus. It's your newest thing. You and your team have done some presentations on it. So let's actually start at the beginning and sort of the concept and how you started thinking about it and how it came into being.
Okay, that's a wonderful question. So there's 2 sides of how it came into being. I'm going to first start with the professional side, right? Me in this job. So as I said, we have housing, our portfolio right now, 2,000 apartments, 7 campuses. The median annual household income of people that live with us in these campuses is $14,000 a year. Now okay. Now the average 1-bedroom apartment in Boston is $3,200 a month. So even if they were willing to spend 100% of their income on housing, which obviously one cannot do, can't live well. So that's an extremely low-income population. Now, the good thing is we have built all these campuses with amazing government support. So people pay 1/3 of their income in rent. The rest of what we need to run the buildings comes from the federal government programs. And so people can live quite beautifully and well with the situation we have them in. We layer on, through our ability to raise philanthropic dollars, a series of programs and services so that it allows people to live their full lives with us. Lots and lots of data about how wonderful, what change that does in people's lives. rather than give you the 10 data points, let me start with one because I find this particularly persuasive. Last year, there was a national study of the impact of wealth on longevity. Not so surprisingly, they found that if you are in the bottom 20% of wealth when you hit 65, your life expectancy is 75. If you are in the top 10% of wealth accumulation, your life expectancy is 85. That's a 10-year difference.
That's big.
Now, I just told you that our median annual household income is $14,000 a year, so you can recognize right away our folks live in the bottom 10% of wealth accumulation. So life expectancy at 2 Life should be 75. It's 87. It's higher than the wealthiest. That means it's proof that the combination of community life that we are able to provide with financial security and all the other pieces to the puzzle actually erases the impact of wealth on longevity. So that's powerful. And once you know that, how can you believe anyone should be denied it by lack of wealth? And yet in our area, the CCRCs are for extremely wealthy people and people who have accumulated $5 million in cash and assets. And that's great. And they're fantastic around, they're wonderful models of how they provide care. But it's not for people who are public school teachers or social workers or librarians. The people who maybe dedicated their entire lives to making the world a better place. And is it really right that they would be denied this opportunity because they're not low income enough to qualify for subsidy? And we should just let that gap go? It felt like a moral imperative to meet
Amy,
that.
This is an area that I think is so important, and we spend so little time talking about because I think the industry is embarrassed about it. I recently had a conversation with somebody who worked for a large operator, regional operator, who spent their lives working for this company as a national resource person, and we were sort of talking, and this person told me that they were caring for a parent with dementia at home. Mm-hmm. And it's like, why are you doing that? Well, I can't afford to put them in a good senior living community. And so it's terrible when even people in the leadership positions, and honestly, most executive directors in most buildings today could not afford to live in the buildings that they're operating. And that should be a problem. And of course, can I go on a tiny little rant here? I probably shouldn't. I'm going to write about it a little bit. I don't know whether you saw the story. I think it was either last week or the week before, maybe when I was on vacation. And but I saw that the CEO of Welltower got a package of $200 million in compensation or something like that. No. It was almost $1 billion. I'm sorry. I think it was almost $1 billion for the CEO, and they had 5 people in the organization who were making over $200 million a year. And that's really disturbing to me. Anyway, so I interrupted, but I just think that this is a passion. So how did you make this work?
Yeah, it took about 5-6 years of R&D because, to be honest, we didn't know how we were going to make it work. And the first thing we said is, okay, we've got a model that works for subsidized housing, so let's just charge privately. And when we figured out the cost of that, very quickly we realized why the people in our market, because land is expensive, staff is, it's all expensive here. So, yeah,
I mean, you're in a really expensive part of the country.
Extremely expensive. So nope. That didn't work. So I actually personally started thinking about where in the world has this kind of problem been resolved? And I actually thought about the early days before it was a nation of Israel. And they had a lot of refugees. They had a lot of people who had intellectual capital, but no money. They had been, kicked out of their countries, and they came with the shirts on their back. And the kibbutz movement really helped build a vibrant economy. And I thought, what can we learn from that? Well, the kibbutz was based on everyone volunteering, right? Everyone contributing their wisdom and labor. So I thought, could volunteerism actually change the calculations here? And I have to say, at first, I thought it was a great idea, and a lot of people thought I was a little bit nuts. So we said, let's market test it. And we tested it. We had these focus groups. I don't know if you've ever been one. I had never been one. You're like behind a double mirror and you can't talk. And, we asked all these questions about lots of things. And then at the end, they said, well, if volunteerism was a requirement as part of it, should it be 2 hours a month, 5 hours a month, or 10 hours a month? 83% of people said 10 hours a month. I was going crazy behind that's nuts. Why wouldn't you say 2 hours a month? So finally they let me in the room when everybody was getting ready to leave. And I said, I have to ask you guys, what's wrong with you? Why would you pick 10 hours a month? And two answers just stuck out for me. One woman said, this would be my last move. This would be the last years of my life. And what if nobody likes me? What if I don't like anybody? What if I don't fit? And there's always going to be an element of a crapshoot. But if everyone has agreed to volunteer 10 hours a month, I kind of feel confident I'll fit in and I'll find people. So I thought that was a really interesting answer. The second one was a guy said, well, I'm lonely. My wife died several years ago, and I really want company, but I'm very shy. And he said, and I've sort of heard presentations, and they always say you can sit at any table you want for dinner and everyone will. And let me tell you, I cannot sit at a table where I don't know. I just can't do that. But he said, I was a librarian, and I'm going to volunteer 10 hours a week in the library. And Steve, you're going to come in. I'm going to say, Steve, can I recommend a book? And you're going to say, okay. And I'm going to ask you a couple questions. I'm going to give you a great book. You're going to come back just a few days later. Say, I couldn't put it down. That was such a good book. Can you make another recommendation? And we're going to get in another conversation. And then you're going to invite me to sit at your table. And I will. I thought, that's so beautiful. So volunteerism then became a key component of how we thought about it. Now, I'll be honest, it started as a way to save money and make it morphed, like before I could say lickety split, into a community building thing. And in fact, it disproportionately attracted people who see it as their responsibility, not ours, to build community and to nurture each other's lives. So that was the first piece. The second piece was, and this is where our disagreement about affordability we can shine a little more light on that. We did a lot of these focus groups, and what we found, which actually in retrospect isn't surprising, but somehow we hadn't gotten there, middle income people, these teachers and librarians and social workers, terrified, having gone through it with their own parents, about making a financial commitment they might outlive their ability to pay. Terrified, because they know how much home care, They were not terrified of a one-time upfront fee, because everyone really knows what their house is worth. You get assessed, you know what your house is worth. Yep. So if we could scale the upfront fee to be about 33 to 50% of the median housing value, they could give us up to 50% of what they sold their house for, and still retain assets for care that inevitably may come. And we're very fortunate that it is a high income area, a high housing value area. So what it turns out is people have owned their houses for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. Well, the value has increased dramatically, and for the most part, they've paid them off. So an upfront fee wasn't scary. And we figured out how to make the aggregate of the upfront fees, again, at staying 3 to 50% of market value, enough that we could pay off 100% of the construction debt with the aggregation of upfront fees. So that means, so we did it. In fact, we were supposed to pay it off at the end of August. We actually paid it off March 2nd. 100% of the construction debt, boom, gone. So when you're not carrying that debt, you can keep monthly fees very, very affordable and not scary. People can pay them on Social Security. They know that they're safe with that. And then the layers on, what makes most middle income people who go into bankruptcy, what causes that? Health and home care costs, right? So in home care costs, it's a very competitive market in the Massachusetts area. people have a minimum of a 4-hour shift, and they're even talking about going to a minimum of a 5-hour shift because of some labor shortage issues, right? So this is something that I discovered with my own mother of blessed memory. She needed a half an hour in the morning, and I ended up paying for 4 hours. And then she needed a half an hour in the morning, half an hour at night. I had to pay for 8 hours of care, which was ludicrous. But I mean, it was what it was. I wanted a good, of course, the best home care agency. So by bringing a home care agency into the building, people can purchase a half an hour. And so we're not paying for that, they're paying for it, but it means their own money can stretch much longer. So we thought about everything that could happen to a middle income person, and how do we make sure that they're with us for their entire lives and living well for their entire lives. So those were the components. Then we lucked out that we were able to buy a site next to a Jewish community center. So they have 2 swimming pools, and they have a indoor running track. So we didn't build those kind of things. And they offer a 60% discount to someone who live with us. So that became a really nice collaboration. It's also on the same campus as one of our subsidized housing developments. And we built a 31,000 square foot community center that's shared by both. So there's some overhead and staffing costs that's saving too. But the big things were the volunteerism, the upfront fees paying off the construction debt, and these partnerships with home and healthcare that make that affordable.
Okay, so let's take, how big are the units?
So there are 14 different unit sizes because we wanted to maximize affordability, the broadest. So the smallest apartment is 650 square feet. It's 1 bedroom, 1 bath. The largest apartment is 1,400 square feet. It's 2 bedroom den, 2 full baths. And there's a lot in between. There's 1 bedroom, 1.5 bath, 1 bedroom den, 1.5 bath, 2 bedrooms, et cetera, all the way. So
and so talk to me about what are the ranges for the initial payment, and is it refundable, and what are the monthly fees?
Okay, so yes, I'm going to start with refundable. So it's 80% is refunded upon your death to your heirs. Now, when I'm going to tell you the monthly fees, but before I tell you that, I'm going to say the median house price, the median in this market area is 1.6 million. That's the median. Okay. Now I'm going to give you the pre-construction prices because I don't off the top of my head remember the post-construction, but they went up a little bit. So just know that. So the pre-construction prices, the upfront went from $360,000 to $970,000.
Okay.
Okay, and again, everything in between. Even the 970 is not that much more than half of the median home price, right? So, and monthly fees, and again, I want to do a comparison. We're in Newton, Massachusetts. The average monthly fee for a 1-bedroom apartment is $3,300, and that includes no utilities and nothing. Yep. Ours run from $1,950 for the smallest unit to about $4,400. That includes all your utilities, including Wi-Fi, all the programs and services, and a $400 meal credit for breakfast, lunch, or dinner as in the restaurant downstairs. So there is nothing anywhere near that. So as you know, like the 1950, people can pay, most of that people can pay on their Social Security. So it's really affordable. They've gone up a little. I think like instead of 1950, it's like 2,100. So it's gone up a little bit, but and I think the lowest entry fee now is I think 400. So it's gone up after we opened, but not radically.
So what happens, couple questions. So what happens when you open a brand new CCRC, you've got a bunch of relatively healthy people moving in. And it sounds like you don't have a separate either skilled nursing, assisted living, or memory care. Is that correct? Correct. So everything is done in the apartments. And it kind of makes sense. I mean, when I look at assisted living in California, and my guess is your regulations are similar. If you have money, you virtually never would have to go into a skilled nursing, because you can get just about anything. If you have enough money, you can get just about anything done in an assisted living community with a waiver. So that makes perfect sense. But you've got this volunteerism. What happens when they all get old and they can't volunteer anymore?
So first of all, even when you get old, most people can still volunteer something. You can take dinner orders, you can fold napkins. It's rare that you get to the point where you really can't do anything.
Yeah.
One of the fascinating things that happened at Opus, which we didn't predict, is we have people in 4 decades. So we have people in their 60s. The majority are in their 70s. We've got about half 70 to 75 and the rest 75 to 80. So huge numbers in their 70s. A group in their 80s, a smaller group in their 90s. So everyone's going to age. I don't think it'll all be exactly happening all at once. And let me be honest, we are figuring out how to use 2,400 hours of volunteer a month. If we had to get by with 1,200, we could get by.
Yeah.
One of the things to understand is the volunteers play different roles. So there's the first set of roles are things that really help run the place. For example, we believe there should always be 2 people at the front desk, because it's a hub of, how do I find this? What do I do about this? So we always want 2 people at the front desk. So one of them we pay. One of them is always a volunteer in 2-hour shifts, so that happens. When people come for dinner, we have a volunteer seating them. This table's for you. We reserve this table for you. Here's a menu. And we actually have them busing tables. And when you go to the clinic and you need an appointment to see the doctor or the nurse practitioner, we have a volunteer doing. So those functions, it's nowhere near 2,400 hours a month. Yeah. So what's really exploded is the things people are doing at their own initiation. So for example, we have a theater troupe started and run completely by residents. They've put on like 4 plays already. We have a chorus started by a resident. We have, I think, about 6 or 7 classes per week, because a lot of these people come with amazing skills. There's a class on nature by a PhD in biology, I guess, whatever. We have 3 art classes a week taught by residents who are artists, and in some cases art educators. We have classes to understand the different religions of people who are here. We have classes on meditation. We have a walking group in the morning and a walking group in the evening. All of these things are just completely initiated. So we have, most people say their biggest problem is there's like 7 or 8 activities per day that residents are offering, and people are saying, like, I can't do them all, and it makes me feel sad. And but we're not stopping them. So could we deal with 3 classes a day instead of 7? Yeah. I think it's all going to adjust, and people are more capable than you think for much longer than you think if you give the right supports. And so we feel good about.
I've always felt that one of the opportunities to make senior living more affordable would be to offer jobs to residents. And every time I suggest that, obviously this wouldn't be true with you, but every time I suggest that to operators, like, you can't trust them with the private information. And I'm thinking, yeah, but you say that, but then you're hiring people with who have never made any money, who've not used to necessarily doing privacy, and this is no disrespect for them, but these are people who mostly have done businesses where they've got privacy they've got to deal with all the time. And I mean, front desk, you could hire people at, filing, medication aids potentially. I mean, there are just so many things. I love this so much. I got so many more questions I want to ask you. So you have announced that you're retiring in October, and yet you're going full speed ahead, like you don't have room to retire for about another 10 years. Tell me about that.
I think change is good for an organization. I've been there 16 years. I think it's time to move on and leave it for the next generation. I'm not sure what's next. I'll be doing some stuff, I'm sure. The only commitment I've made is I will be at Boston College 1 day a week as a professional in residence. I'm excited about that. And I will see where this leads me. I'll probably be doing something else. I think I'm ready not to work 70 hours a week and take the full responsibility of really never being off. And that's just the way I've chosen to do it. I'm not blaming anyone. It's my own.
Sure. No, I get it. I get it. So, so
it's time. I'll be 70 in October when I retire. And
so I want to spend your embedded PACE program. I want to spend. We're essentially out of time, but I want to touch on that for just a minute. Tell me, does it only serve your residents?
No.
Outside people? Tell me a little bit about that. Again, I just think that PACE is one of the most and hospice are the two most underutilized government services out there.
Isn't it funny? Because it's such a cool thing. It's so amazing. So I fell in love with PACE many, many years ago. And then the question is, well, how do you bring it into housing? And it's so much more complicated than it should be, but it is. And I worked closely with our state government. And one of the challenges was you don't get to choose your PACE. You have to go with whoever they've assigned your zip code to. And I didn't want to do that. So we lobbied really hard. And our last governor was very good about giving us a waiver. So we interviewed all the different PACEs. And we ended up with this wonderful PACE program called Element Care that is just so values consistent with me and our whole team and who we are. And so when we were building our newest building, our second to newest, J.J. Carroll in Brighton, where we already had about 800 apartments on one campus, and now we have 960 apartments on one campus. We built the ground floor as a PACE for Element Care. And because it's on a main street, Chestnut Hill Avenue, which is a main thoroughfare, it's open to the neighbors, to the public, and our residents. And it's thriving. It's a wonderful service. In fact, we were so in love with PACE that when we went to build Opus, which of course, to go to PACE, you have to be dual eligible. You have to be Medicare and Medicaid. So people in Opus are not Medicaid eligible. So we found a medical practice that people used to work in PACE. They believe in PACE. So they were trying to recreate PACE like for people who aren't Medicaid eligible. So that model is exactly the model we all believe in. And it's wonderful. So it's built into our Brighton campus. And now we're building in Lynn, which is where their headquarters is, Element Care. So it is also embedded in the 150 apartments we're building right now in Lynn, and be done in months.
What percentage of your residents are also PACE members?
I don't know, because the Lynn one hasn't opened yet. In Brighton, it's not, I wouldn't say it's as big as it should be. I think it's probably 10%, something like that.
Is that right? That's interesting. So
there's a lot of psychological obstacles that people don't understand how good PACE is. We're working on it. I think over time it will be different.
It's the same thing with PACE. With the hospice, right? I've had so many friends who have put their parents on hospice 10 days, 3 days before they passed away. My stepfather, who's 93 with dementia, he's been on hospice for a year and a half, maybe. And we don't have any trouble with we haven't had any trouble. It just makes it, when he was at home when we started, it made our lives so immeasurably better to have a nurse in a couple times a week, a bath aide in a couple times a week, makes the life where he's in the community he's at so much better. And then people say, oh, if I put them on hospice, it means they're going to die sooner. I don't know. It means they're going to live longer. It means they're going to live longer. If you have somebody, get them on PACE. On hospice, it'll change their life and your life. Amy, we're out of time. We're past out of time. This has been great. Check out what they're doing at the Two Life Communities website. I can hardly wait to see what you do in retirement as you continue to change the world. And if you have a passion for helping lower income people, middle income people, reach out to Amy, learn how she did it, because it's not so any other people could do it, and there are places it could be easier to be done at a lower cost in lower cost of living parts of the country. So with that, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you. And let me add the kudos, because I love what I do and I feel really good about it. But getting the word out and helping people understand is critical. It is so underdone in our society, paying attention to what older adults need. That kudos for what you do. And I'll continue to follow you just as I always have.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I want to say thanks to Jada for producing in the background. I almost forgot that, but without her, this would never work.